Have you ever finished a book and felt like your whole world shifted? These are the books that changed my life, the ones I return to again and again for inspiration and wisdom. Join me as I share the stories that shaped me. The first book that truly changed me was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I read it when I was a teenager, and it was the first time I truly saw the world through someone else's eyes. The quiet strength of Atticus Finch, the moral clarity he brought to a deeply unjust situation, and Scout's innocent but piercing observations of the world around her all made a lasting impression. That novel didn't just show me the injustice in the world, it made me want to do something about it. It planted the seed of empathy in me, one that has grown ever since. Another book that transformed my thinking was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I read it during a particularly difficult time in my life, when I was searching for a reason to keep going, to push through the fog of sadness and confusion. Frankl's account of surviving Nazi concentration camps while maintaining his sense of purpose was both heartbreaking and uplifting. His belief that we can endure almost anything if we find meaning in our suffering reshaped how I view challenges and loss. It's a book that gave me strength when I had none, and I've recommended it to nearly everyone I know. Then there's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, a novel that feels more like a whispered conversation with your soul than a traditional story. Its message, that the universe conspires to help you achieve your personal legend, reminded me to trust the journey, even when it feels uncertain or painful. Santiago's travels mirrored my own emotional and spiritual growth, and every time I read it, I find a new piece of myself in his story. It's a deceptively simple book, but its impact on me has been profound. I can't talk about life-changing books without mentioning Educated by Tara Westover. Her memoir about growing up in a strict, isolated household and eventually breaking free through education resonated with me on a deeply personal level. Her courage in reclaiming her own voice, even when it meant losing parts of her past, reminded me of the power of self-discovery and the importance of questioning the narratives we inherit. It's not just a story about education, it's about reclaiming identity, truth, and agency. Lastly, The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, though a children's book on the surface, has offered me more wisdom in adulthood than many thick volumes of philosophy. Its lessons on love, loss, and seeing with the heart have stuck with me over the years. There's something eternally comforting in its quiet truth. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Whenever I feel disconnected or overwhelmed, I return to it like a lighthouse in a storm. These books are more than just stories. They are mirrors, teachers, and companions. They've shaped how I see the world and how I move through it. They've offered me hope when I had none, clarity when I was lost, and courage when I was afraid. And perhaps most importantly, they've reminded me that words, simple, honest, human words, can change everything. Have you ever finished a book and felt like your whole world shifted? These are the books that changed my life, the ones I return to again and again for inspiration and wisdom. Join me as I share the stories that shaped me. Books have a strange, almost magical ability to transform the way we see the world. I've often found myself pausing mid-page, struck by a sentence that challenges everything I thought I knew. Literature has been more than entertainment. It's been a mirror, a lens, and sometimes even a hammer breaking down old assumptions. When I read To Kill a Mockingbird, it wasn't just a story about racism and justice in the American South. It was a powerful confrontation with the reality of human prejudice, and it made me examine my own biases. Harper Lee didn't just tell a story, she shifted my worldview. That's the transformative power of literature. Its ability to force us to look inward, to rethink what we believe, and to emerge from the final page somehow different than we were before. Beyond shifting perspectives, books have always fed my curiosity. As a child, I tore through encyclopedias, novels, and even the back of cereal boxes, desperate to understand the world. That hunger for knowledge never left me. Reading became my lifelong classroom. *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari expanded my understanding of human history in ways no traditional class ever did. A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking dared me to grapple with the universe's most profound mysteries. Even novels like The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss sparked intellectual wonder, not just in the story itself, but in the language, the structure, the act of storytelling. Each book became a doorway, and I never knew what kind of world I would step into next. Through them, I learned that education doesn't end with school. It's something we carry with us always, fueled by the simple act of reading. But perhaps the deepest impact books have had on me is emotional. They've been my refuge in dark times, my companions in loneliness, and my comfort in heartbreak. I remember reading The Little Prince during a difficult winter in my life. Its gentle wisdom, its quiet insistence on seeing with the heart, not the eyes, brought a kind of peace I hadn't known I needed. Or A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachmann, which found me when I was grieving. Its mixture of humor and sorrow mirrored my own emotional messiness and gave me permission to feel all of it. Books have never judged me. They've met me where I was and held me steady until I could move forward again. In the end, the books that changed my life didn't just teach me facts or stories. They shaped my identity. They challenged me to grow, to learn, to feel, and to see. They've been teachers, friends, and quiet guides through every chapter of my life. And even now, when I finish a truly great book, I sit there for a moment in awe, feeling, once again, that subtle but powerful shift in my world. My personal library isn't just a collection of books, it's a carefully gathered archive of experiences, emotions, and ideas that have touched my life in ways I often struggle to put into words. Each book I own has earned its place on the shelf, not because it was popular or recommended, but because it spoke to something inside me, something quiet and true. Some of them arrived in moments of joy, others during periods of confusion or grief. Together, they form a kind of map of my inner life, one that charts where I've been and offers glimpses of where I might go. When people ask me what kind of reader I am, I hesitate to give a simple answer. The truth is, my tastes are as varied as my moods, and my library reflects that diversity in full color. My journey as a reader began, like it does for many, in childhood. I can still remember the first time I truly lost myself in a story. It was Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. I was young, maybe 8 or 9, and I had never known that words could create such deep feelings. I cried when Charlotte died, real tears, the kind that come from losing something important. That was the first time a book made me feel something beyond excitement or entertainment. It taught me about friendship, sacrifice, and the strange beauty of endings. That book still sits on my shelf, tattered and faded, but cherished. It marked the beginning of a lifelong love for literature. As I grew older, my reading tastes expanded beyond children's literature. In middle school, I found myself captivated by fantasy. The Hobbit, by J.R.R. Tolkien, was a revelation. The idea that entire worlds could be created, complete with languages, histories, and cultures, blew my mind. I fell in love with the concept of adventure, of stepping beyond the known and into the realm of the possible. From there, I devoured the Chronicles of Narnia, Aragon, and the Golden Compass. These stories weren't just escapes, they were invitations to imagine, to believe in something bigger than my immediate surroundings. Even now, as an adult, fantasy remains one of my favorite genres, not because I need to escape reality, but because it often reveals truths about the real world in unexpected ways. In high school, my reading shifted toward more introspective and emotionally complex works. That's when I discovered The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Holden Caulfield's voice, his confusion, his sarcasm, and his desperate search for authenticity resonated with me in a way that felt almost eerie. I didn't always agree with him, but I understood him. That was the first time I realized that books don't always have to be comfortable. Sometimes, the best ones are the ones that leave you uneasy, that force you to look at yourself a little more honestly. Around the same time, I read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and its quiet heartbreak left a permanent impression. I began to seek out stories that made me feel deeply, that exposed the raw edges of human experience. In college, my reading habits broadened even more. I began to explore nonfiction, memoirs, and essays. One of the most powerful books I encountered during that time was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I picked it up at a used bookstore, not expecting much, and ended up finishing it in a single day. Frankl's reflections on life in a concentration camp and his insistence that meaning can be found even in the most horrific circumstances changed the way I see suffering. It was a deeply humbling read. That book taught me that literature isn't just about entertainment or even empathy. It can be a tool for survival, a light in the darkest of places. I also discovered the joy of poetic prose through authors like James Baldwin and Toni Morrison. The Fire Next Time and Beloved are two books that I return to frequently. Baldwin's voice is urgent, lyrical, and fearless. He challenges the reader to confront uncomfortable truths about race, identity, and power. Morrison, meanwhile, weaves language with such grace and complexity that I often find myself rereading passages just to savor the rhythm of her words. Her characters are layered, haunted, and human in the truest sense. These authors didn't just tell stories, they revealed worlds, and in doing so, they helped me see mine more clearly. As my reading evolved, so did my understanding of what a book could mean to a person. Sometimes it's not about what a book says, but when you read it. Timing, I've learned, is everything. I remember picking up The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho at a time when I felt directionless. Its simple fable about following one's personal legend struck a chord. I know some people find it overly sentimental, but for me, in that moment, it was exactly what I needed. It reminded me to trust in the journey, to listen to the quiet voice inside. Similarly, Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed found me when I needed gentle, unflinching advice. Her letters, full of compassion and tough love, felt like a hand on my shoulder. My personal library also includes books that speak to my identity and heritage. The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri resonated deeply with my own experiences of cultural duality, of feeling caught between two worlds. Lahiri's quiet, precise storytelling made me feel seen in ways I hadn't before. Reading her work gave me language for feelings I hadn't been able to articulate. It also opened the door to a wider exploration of diasporic literature. I began reading authors like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Mohsin Hamid, and Ocean Vuong, all of whom write with a raw, emotional clarity that both hurts and heals. Their stories don't just reflect my experience, they expand it, deepening my understanding of what it means to belong and to question that belonging. What I've come to love most about my library is its refusal to be confined. There are classic novels and contemporary experiments, deeply academic texts and laugh-out-loud humor. There's Pride and Prejudice sitting beside Born a Crime. There's 1984 next to The Rosie Project. I love that juxtaposition. It mirrors the way life works, not in neat categories, but in complex, overlapping stories. I've learned as much from David Sedaris's wit as I have from Bell Hooks's insight. One book makes me laugh until I cry, another breaks my heart in silence. Both belong. Both matter. Books have also been a source of connection. Some of the most meaningful conversations I've had began with a shared love for a particular story. A copy of Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami once sparked a long discussion with a stranger on a train that ended in a new friendship. Recommending The Midnight Library to a coworker led to surprising revelations about our mental health journeys. My library isn't just about what I read, it's about what I share. Each recommendation feels like a small act of trust, of vulnerability. When I hand someone a book I love, I'm giving them a piece of myself. There's something comforting about being surrounded by books that have seen you through. Some of them are dog-eared and underlined, others pristine and waiting. But each one is part of the story I'm still writing, the story of who I am. Sometimes I take one off the shelf just to hold it for a moment, to flip through the pages and remember who I was when I first read it. Other times I return to a book not for its plot, but for the feeling it gives me. My library has become a space of memory, comfort, and endless curiosity. What I've realized over time is that the books I keep closest are the ones that helped me become more myself. They've expanded my capacity for empathy, challenged my assumptions, and offered companionship in solitude. They've taught me to think critically, feel deeply, and see the beauty in complexity. I don't measure their worth by how often I read them, but by how deeply they've rooted themselves in me. Some are loud and bold, others quiet and subtle. Together, they tell the story of a life shaped by words. My personal library is not just a room, a shelf, or a collection. It's a living, breathing reflection of my interests, values, questions, and hopes. It grows with me, shifts with me, and at times even leads me. In its pages, I've found pieces of the world and pieces of myself. And as long as I keep reading, I know I'll keep discovering new ways to be, to think, and to dream. Viktor E. Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, was an Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor. Born in 1905 in Vienna, Frankl was deeply influenced by Freud and Adler early in his career, but eventually developed his own school of thought, known as logotherapy, a form of existential analysis focused on the human drive to find meaning in life. His experiences in Nazi concentration camps during World War II, including Auschwitz, profoundly shaped his psychological philosophy and formed the basis of this book. Written shortly after the war in 1946, Man's Search for Meaning is both a memoir and a psychological exploration, offering a unique perspective on suffering, survival, and the human spirit. The book has since become one of the most influential psychological texts of the 20th century and continues to resonate with readers around the world. At its core, the book examines the idea that life has meaning under all circumstances, even the most miserable ones. Frankl's belief that those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how serves as a guiding principle throughout the narrative. Through his harrowing account of life in the concentration camps, deprivation, loss, forced labor, and constant brutality, Frankl illustrates how meaning can be a powerful source of strength. He observed that those who could identify some form of purpose, whether it was a loved one waiting for them or an unfinished task, were more likely to survive than those who had lost all sense of hope. Another central theme is the freedom of choice. Even when stripped of every external freedom, Frankl argues that we retain the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is a radical and empowering idea. It places responsibility on the individual, not in a harsh or condemning way, but as an invitation to rise, to endure, and to live meaningfully even amid adversity. The idea of finding meaning through suffering has lingered with me ever since I read the book. I came across it during a period in my life that was filled with emotional uncertainty and self-doubt. I wasn't facing anything close to the horrors Frankl endured, but I was struggling to find direction, to understand the purpose behind the challenges I was experiencing. Frankl's words didn't magically solve my problems, but they gave me a framework for understanding them. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" I started asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift in perspective changed everything. The book also shaped my values in subtle but lasting ways. It made me more resilient, more reflective, and more patient with myself and with others. It reminded me that while we can't always control our circumstances, we can always control how we respond. That's not just a comforting idea, it's a powerful one. It inspired me to take more responsibility for my mindset and to pursue activities that bring real meaning into my life, rather than just comfort or distraction. In many ways, Man's Search for Meaning helped me reframe the concept of suffering, not as something to be avoided at all costs, but as something that, when met with courage and introspection, can lead to growth. It taught me that pain and purpose can coexist, and that meaning isn't something we find once and for all. It's something we create, one choice at a time. To this day, I keep a copy of the book within arm's reach. Whenever I feel overwhelmed, lost, or defeated, I revisit its pages and find a quiet clarity waiting for me there. It's more than just a book. It's a reminder of the human capacity for endurance, dignity, and hope.